Hello, this is Jing and my partner Harry. Today, we are going to talk about language challenges and strategies in different content area. So let's talk about the general agenda about today's presentation. So we separate the language challenges and strategies into three parts. First of all, we're going to talk about science, the language challenges and strategies in science class. And then we're going to talk about the challenges and strategies in math class. And finally, we will talk about the challenges and strategies in history class. So before we're talking about the challenges and the strategies, we are wondering how and why these language challenges appear. So first of all, it's because of the shift in curricular materials. So in the lower grades, students may learn more language related to the daily life, everyday life. However, as they step into the higher grades, the shift in curricular materials change their language to more narrative language to more expository language. So basically, it's different from students' everyday language, which creates a difficulty for students. And also the text, the language the students receive from their teacher actually is different from the language students are expected to produce. And this kind of disconnectivity will result to a challenge and a difficulty, a trouble spot for students to successfully produce and learn and comprehend the language their teachers expected them to do. And then let's move on to the first part, science. As I already listed here, the challenges are on the left column and the strategies are on the right column. In this graph, in this table, I kind of sort the strategies to the challenges, but we need to remember, we need to keep in mind that strategies can be used for many challenges. It's not limited to what I state here. So for here, I just trying to summarize the table that looks professional and can solve more challenge to solve the specific challenges. But you also can manipulate the strategies to other challenges as well. And for the first two challenges, technical vocabulary and ordinary words with non-vernacular meaning or usages. Those two challenges are basically on the vocabulary level. So the first one, the technical vocabulary, it means it is obvious. So when students are learning science, there are many jargons or technical words the students are not familiar with in their daily life. So they face a difficulty about understanding that. And the other one is the ordinary words with non-vernacular meaning or usage. It's basically like the words students may see in their daily life, but the scientists are use these ordinary words in a non-common sensual way or in a metaphorical way. So the students, when students are decoding a language, they actually are facing a difficulty of comprehending it in the right way. Corresponding to that, the strategies I put it here is vocabulary building and the paraphrasing for the second one. So actually, we can help students to build their vocabulary repertoire. For example, introduce them to some rules and affixes and to help them develop the control over the technical vocabulary. And also the paraphrasing, the student needs to comprehend and understand the meaning of the sentence and rephrase it. So in this process, the student can understand the ordinary words can also have other meanings. So I won't introduce these challenges and strategies one by one. Let me choose, let me focus on several of them because of the time limits. And for example, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, and number 9, they are in the sentence level. So there is a really good strategy to help them is the sentence stripping. So basically is you sort the sentence into small sections and it's like a decoding a structure. In this way, students can know how the language are combined and how should they sort the language when they see these kind of sentences. And for the number 10, abstract noun, so The strategy is sentence completion, so it requires students to synthesize information to prior text into a noun. So in this way, when the students complete a sentence, actually they have already summarized the noun, summarize the information they see in the previously into abstract noun, which is really useful. And the lengthy noun is used as noun expansion, which is really obvious. And okay, let me talk about the number 4. Let's come back to here. So developing awareness of signpost, this is really important as well. So as long as the students can target some connectivities word, it will be easier for students to know, oh, what's gonna happen next. And it is a great signal for students to understanding the languages. Okay, these are the challenges and strategies in science areas. And let's move on to the next page.
So there's a more strategies you could also using in your science-centered language development classrooms. For instance, you could by offering extra thinking spaces for your students by allowing them to switch their attention in the language focus by using asking and define the problems in the science area. So in asking the students the possible problems and how they define their situations, they could mentally precise their problems and then go through what possible language structures they could use to answering the questions. For the second part is communication skills. This is an important stage in building your science-centered classrooms. You could first allowing your students partnership and also building their companionship with peers in figuring out what possible science solutions could build into their reports, and then what language focus they are generate as a together could improve their reports. For the second, you also could bring more whole class discussion supports by allowing students to report what their findings or report what language structures they use in the final stage. And students also could be under the scaffolding of the teachers in bring more abstract content words into more specific and details in their verbal summary and explanations. Lastly, for the final stage, generating students' final reports, you could also by using several different writing techniques. First is persuasive writings, and second is expository writings. By allowing students finalize their answers, you could provide several templates or give them a sentence structures by allowing them to following or maybe modeling them how to incorporate their target language into their science reports. So we can move to the next part of introducing their math.
Okay, so for the math challenges, the traditional thinking in school is math is the least language dependent subject. So in the math area, they don't need to use lots of language, but that is a wrong thinking and a wrong concept. So for the schooling, the challenges is that the students, the word they frequently used every day is not, they did not focus on the language. So they may ignore the teaching in math. So this is the challenges the schooling is facing. And for the mathematics register, there are various mathematical register involved in math class. And basically the mathematics register means the mathematical use of natural language and not math itself. And beyond the linguistic issues, there are also some social class and gender implications. And some of the teachers, they tend not to use the mathematical languages. And with all this kind of exposure, the students may not have the chance to listen to it, so they cannot produce it. Okay, let's move on.
So to solve our possible math challenges, we also prepare several strategies. For the first one is an obvious, you can throw using the grouping students by classroom interaction and activities, allowing them to exercise an implicit learning with their peers and use a language to construct their math problems into a meaningful way. So the second is you also can solve their math problems in our schooling designing. The first one, you want to be shortening your nominal expressions, and you want to make their conditional relationships into more explicit changing. Second, you also could change their complex questions or phrases in the math into the simple question words, allowing students to comprehend the math questions easily. And you also could change their passive voice into the active voice. right? So you're also replacing more less frequent and mass vocabularies into more common terms, which students could easily understand and comprehend what type of math problems they need to solve, and instructions and steps what they need to do in solve the problems. So lastly, we also prepared the multi-mnemonic mathematical registers. By using these strategies, you could use an oral distribution into the class and moving from our daily use vocabularies into more practical and more mathematical words that students could report in the discussion. So let's move to the next stage. So for the first is historical challenges. We divided into two categories. The first one is linguistic challenges. Obviously, you can see the challenge in the textbook. There are several shortcomings in our current textbooks. For example, the language using the textbook may not really fit into the students' levels, and there will be no clear and explanations of their topic, and there will be lack of their explanations of ideas, motivations, and even their history consequences. There are also even lack of their deep of their cultural background information that provides in the textbook. So for non-native speakers, they cannot understand what's really going on in the history textbook. For the even native speakers, the unrealistic words using in the textbook also prevents them to understand the real stories. So for the higher grade students, you want to be develop their advanced literacy in academic discipline. So you also want to be solve their problems in the middle and secondary school levels because they expected more academic performance in their higher graduate school, higher grade students. So lastly, you also want to be challenging is discourse structure more complex language focused. To solve our history challenges, we also have several strategies.
So about the history strategies, here are some typical approaches.
Okay.
Mhm.
So for our typical approaches, we kind of like want to focus on the vocabulary, which is a simple way. As a teacher, you want to use Avery aids, graphical organizers to teach the vocabulary meaning, pronunciation, etc. You also probably want to enrich your students' language practice inputs by allowing them to listening the explanation of the words, stories, and content. You also will hand it out to more reading sources to them to repeat listening and reading the stories. So I also want involve with more academic discussions for students to explore deeply of those history stories. You also maybe provide more reading reports for students to give them outputs opportunities. But does this really can solve the higher grade students' challenges? Maybe not. So we'll move to the next strategy.
Okay, so talking about the more strategies about the higher grade level students, so we may need to help them to learn how to do the analysis of the grammatical and lexical choices. And also let them explore the language using of the author. And finally, enable students to develop academic English while critically assessing the explanations of events and related language and concept learning. So after discussing all the challenges and strategies for all three content area, we may need to think about why we're gonna target these challenges. It is, as teachers, it is important for us to anticipate the trouble spots. And by keeping in mind this trouble spot, actually we have the strategies and solutions to help them in multiple school subjects. At the end, we're gonna lead them to success because we know their challenge, we know their trouble spots, and we also have the corresponding strategies to help them to understand the connections and to help them to understand the language to comprehend. So yeah, and also if the teachers want to do that, the teachers may distinguish the language for the topic or the language for the discourse. That will be also really helpful for students. Okay, I think that's all for our presentation today about the language challenges and language strategies in multiple content area. Thank you.
Thank you.